5 Terrifying Stories About Games. Terrifying games have grown in popularity, encompassing a wide range of subgenres, styles, and settings. Despite their bleak outlooks, many of the fictitious locations in video games are based on real-world locations. Exhilarating sensations can be had by playing games that play with the darkest fears. AAA games, RPGs, action, FPS, and open-world games like the GTA series provide tremendous challenges as well, but they do not provide the same experience as horror games. Each genre, after all, has its own set of challenges, stories, and experiences. Many terrifying games provide a wonderful challenge for those looking for something different from casual games. In general, horror game plots, such as Silent Hill, Resident Evil, and Outlast, are pure fiction. But imagine if the horror game's story was inspired by true events. It has to be scarier than the ones with made-up stories. Before we move on to the next step, first subscribe to my channel for more videos. Number 5. Number 70. Eye of Basir. Platform: Microsoft Windows. Publisher: Artcom FZC. Eye of Basir is an adventure, horror game that can be experienced in virtual reality. It tells the story of Erhan and Aras, two brothers who were raised by their grandmother in a strange house where the paranormal is common. When their grandmother died, they decided to leave home. And we lived normally for 20 years, both successful in their careers, Erhan as an archaeologist and Aras as a creative director, both recognized and renowned in their circles. Aras will then go in search of him. After the player's grandmother passes away, they must examine their character's childhood house in number 70. Eye of Basir, a horror exploration game. After allegedly witnessing paranormal beings as a child, it is up to players to figure out what happened when the player's brother goes missing in the house. House number 70 is out there, said Volkan Demir, the game's director. The game is based on true events that occurred decades ago in that very house. The game is a massive spook fest and worth buying up if players are not terrified of the dark, despite the fact that he never goes further into the history of said property. Number 4. Neverending Nightmares. Platforms: PlayStation 4, Android, iOS, Microsoft Windows, Linux. Publisher: Infinitap Games, Limited Run Games. The player takes the role of Thomas, a man who wakes up from one nightmare and into another. As the player navigates Thomas throughout the game, the nightmares become progressively worse, including the horrifying monsters that lurk within them. Each time Thomas dies in a nightmare, comes across some serious cause of depression, or commits self-harm, he will wake up again in either the same nightmare as before, or into a different one. This acts as the game's checkpoint and save system. Lead game designer Matt Gilgenbach's personal problems with extreme obsessive-compulsive disorder and despair inspired this terrifying 2014 horror game in which you are trapped in a nightmare after nightmare, as the title suggests. Specific visuals, compulsive fears, and weird, oppressive ideas that Gilgenbach experienced during a significant attack of mental illness in the early 2000s are clearly engraved into this terrifying game, according to him. So many references, no matter how minor or large, are directly inspired by Gilgenbach's prior condition, from seemingly endless hallways to the disturbing tics and talks of grandfather clocks to an axe bathed in blood. Number 3. The Town of Light. Platforms: PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Publisher: LKA. The Town of Light is a psychological horror adventure game developed by LKA and published by Wired Productions. It was released for PC on February 26, 2016 and PlayStation 4 and Xbox One on June 6, 2017. On February 1, 2018, a Nintendo Switch version was confirmed. This version was released on February 7, 2020. The physical release of the Nintendo Switch version was cancelled in April 2019. The game is set in a hospital in Tuscany, Italy called the Ospedale Psichiatrico di Volterra. 5. The player character is a girl named Renee, who was a patient at the hospital in the 1940s. The game begins as Renee enters the now dilapidated asylum to relive her stay there. LKA developed The Town of Light, a psychological horror adventure game. Renee, a young girl with a major mental disorder, and her struggle to survive are the subjects of this story. She has a number of issues, including periodic blackouts, anxiety, and a peculiar sound in her brain. Renee is searching for answers about her past in Ospedale Psichiatrico di Volterra, a real-life Italian hospital where she spent most of her childhood as a patient. The real-life hospital was closed down in 1978 after the treatment of its 6,000 patients was deemed extremely brutal. Many patients transferred there to be treated for psychiatric problems never returned home, earning the facility the nickname, the place of no return, among locals. Number 2. Colette. Platforms: PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. Publisher: IMGN. Pro. The game is based on the Dyatlov Pass incident, a true event that involved 10 Russian students, 9 of which went missing on Kholat Syakhl and were found dead in the time span of 4 months. The 10th student had walked back earlier due to illness. Kholat is an indie horror game set in Russia and inspired by the Dyatlov Pass incident. This game portrays the story of 9 college students who traveled to Kholat Syakhl mountain in 1959 but then remained missing for 4 months before being discovered dead. While being pursued by a shadow ghost-like thing, the player must find numerous pages including portions from the investigator's report and sections from the 9 hikers' logbook. No one knows for sure who murdered this group of hikers, most of whom were university students, to this day. Some skeptics believe it was an accident, while others believe they were attacked by a Russian Yeti. The fact that one hiker's tongue and eye were missing, as well as another hiker's shattered skull, makes for a considerably more terrifying scenario than an accident. Number 1. Fatal Frame. Platforms: PlayStation 2, Nintendo 3DS, Wii, Wii U, and Xbox. Publisher: Koei Tecmo. Fatal Frame, titled Zero in Japan and Project Zero in Europe and Australia, is a Japanese survival horror video game series created, published, and developed by Koei Tecmo, originally Tecmo. Debuting in 2001 with the first entry in the series for the PlayStation 2, the series consists of 5 main entries. The series is set in 1980s Japan, with each entry focusing on a location beset by hostile supernatural events. In each scenario, the characters involved in the present investigation use camera obscura, objects created by Dr. Kunihiko Aso that can capture and pacify spirits. The series draws on staple elements of Japanese horror and is noted for its frequent use of female protagonists. Fatal Frame is a popular horror game that features a horrific tale, as well as excellent imagery and graphics. The story takes place in Japan in the Himuro Mansion. Nobody is aware that the Himuro home exists. The Himuro Mansion actually exists in Japan, and it is thought to be the site of one of the country's worst mass murders, with 7 individuals purportedly found dead as a result of bizarre occult rituals. The strangling ritual, in which a young girl would have ropes attached to her limbs, only to have them stretched apart and cut off from her in order to seal off evil spirits from the house, was supposedly carried out there. I hope that you liked this video. So watching our more interesting videos, do like and subscribe to